this economy is not working. And it's not because I'm an economist, or it's not because I'm a conservative. It's not because I somehow want to say, hey, let's never make Joe Biden look good. It's because I'm affected by it like you're affected by it. This argument that a conversation about the economy is a political argument only comes from the White House when they make it political. For the rest of us, it's about real life. The differences between Wall Street and Midwest Main Street are absolutely positively massive, and yet somehow they are still constantly, consistently ignored. And we get a jobs report today that shows that job growth totals are 236,000 from the month of March, nearing expectation as the hiring pace slows down. And you see the market say, oh, you see, or either the layman saying, see, the markets, they're hitting expectations, everything's good. Good. My gosh, this economy is pretty blank and far from good. Guys, welcome to the show. Good to be with you. Presented by Americans for Prosperity, americansforprosperity.org, economic liberty, free speech. Dr. Matt Will joins us right now, economist at the University of Indianapolis. And Dr. Will, he sends me texts sometimes. He thinks that, I need even more information than I'm already getting, sir. And he sends me from the Institute for Supply Management this report. I've got it here. I want to put this so everybody can see it and understand it. Here it is, right here. The March manufacturing PMI registered 46.3%, 1.4 percentage points lower than recorded in February. Regarding the overall economy, this is the fourth month of contraction after a 30-month period of expansion, and it goes on from there. You look at this, Dr. Will, you see the jobs report that's out today. Then you take a look at this. What is this telling you?
Well, Tony, I talk about this all the time. In fact, I mentioned it on your show. It's one of those reports that are very important to me because it's not a government report. This is a real-time business survey that comes out every single month. So it's what is happening in the streets right now in business. And this report says everything across the board is bad. Everything. You mentioned the headline, which is 4 months of shrinking economy. Well, there's 5 months of shrinking manufacturing. But let me go down the list. New orders are down for 7 months in a row. Production is down 4 months in a row. Employment is down 2 months in a row. So what we see in that report that's coming out from the government, Tony, that's a delayed report. Businesses have been contracting in employment for 2 months now. Supplier deliveries are down for 6 months in a row. Inventories have been shrinking, Tony, for 78 months. Customer inventories are shrinking. The list goes on, Tony. This is the worst report I've seen, and I've been looking at this report for about 20 years.
Let's take a step back. Take a step back with me, though. This report from the ISM, right? So it's the Institute for Supply Management. What are they using as their basis for where manufacturers are, where inventories are? Talk to me about what is low. Talk to me about the concepts of contraction. Where are the places that make economists like you say that's a problem?
Well, Tony, they get the information from purchasing managers and production managers. So they're on the phones every month calling up factories and businesses across the country. That's where the data comes from. And the number is 50. 50 is like the break-even line. If it's above 50, it's expanding. If it's below 50, it's contracting. And so let's just pick one of those numbers. Inventories. Customer inventories have been contracting for 78 months. That means the customers, the people who are buying the products, putting it on their shelves, have said, we don't need as much. They're calling less. The back orders, new orders, Tony, 8 months in a row now, new orders have shrunk. That means that for 8 months, the people buying the stuff from the manufacturers and the wholesalers, they're saying, we don't need as much. Tony, that's an indicator of recession. When new orders are down, when inventories are down, when people aren't buying product. This is from the people that are making it. But they're the best leading indicator out there.
Are they getting this word from the street that nobody wants it? Or is this still a supply chain issue that even if somebody wanted, they don't have the stuff they need to make it?
Well, Tony, there's a wide range of issues on that. So there's the leading expert in the primary metals business. had a quote in this report saying that they are still experiencing significant supply chain issues on several indirect supplies. So there's still problems with the supply chain that haven't been fixed, regardless of what Mayor Pete says. We're still having supply chain problems.
I don't think anybody was relying on Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg to get it solved, which really brings us to how bad is it still? I mean, we saw, of course, that you had ships waiting at port, whether it be Long Beach or Los Angeles, and you realized that the longshoremen really had such a stranglehold on things. We don't engage automation. We have not updated and modernized in multiple decades. We've got a real issue if we have slowdowns and then an unwillingness to work harder to get things off ships, to get things moving faster. But has the market worked in a way to try and solve some of these supply chain issues, or are they really stymied? Are they screwed because government inaction prevents them from being able to take action?
You know, Tony, I hate to say it, but it's like, you know, it's like the market has been abused, because every single quote that I read in this report from various companies have said they've accepted the current state. They've accepted that this is the new status quo, that we're going to have supply chain problems, that you're going to have to narrow your inventory selection. You know, I'm one of those people that buys tchotchkes for the university, and I can tell you that our suppliers, we've just accepted the fact that we don't have 10 choices for, you know, logoed shirts. We have 2. We've just accepted that fact that there is less selection out there.
Talking to Dr. Matt Will, economist at the University of Indianapolis. Let me go back to this jobs report, right? With growth totals at 236,000. That's what everybody's going to be talking about today. And this was the key points from CNN right here. That non-farm payrolls grew and it matched basically the estimate. The unemployment rate ticks down to 3.5%. The average hourly earnings rose 0.3%. So it's the lowest level since June of 2021. And the unemployment rate for Black Americans at a record low. You tell me the Biden administration, Dr. Will, isn't going to cheer these numbers, and that these numbers don't give them a reason to?
Well, of course they're going to cheer these numbers, Tony. They're going to cheer the fact that we have a shortage of workers on the front lines. You know, you go to a restaurant, you're going to wait in line. You go to get service at any retail establishment, you're going to have a problem. Tony, it's not because the economy is growing. The facts are that the economy isn't growing. The reality is that we still haven't recovered from the great recession we had during the pandemic. Tony, let's remember one very important thing. More businesses shut down during the pandemic than at any time in history, and they have not yet recovered. So when you go to the store and you see a line, Tony, there aren't as many stores. Don't think that the economy is doing great. The companies that are gone, that shut down, they haven't come back. That's why you see the line, because we still have a lack of supply on the retail side.
This lack of supply, as we go back to this manufacturing report, which you see as not so much the canary in the coal mine, but you're kind of making a different argument, sir. You're making the argument that the canary is dead. It's been dead for a while, and somebody just came across it. We've talked about this in some other ways regarding banking. If this has been months of decline in production, if we're now in month 4 or 5 of contraction, although we've seen supplies or inventories necessarily going down because there isn't any purchasing power to it, when do we start actually seeing it in the real world? Or are we seeing it and we've become a nerd to it, used to it, new normal to it?
You know, Tony, that one point, it's a new normal, so we're used to it. And also we're confused. Going back to what we just talked about with retail, going to a store, a restaurant, we're confused because we see the long line at the restaurant. So we think the economy is good, but that's a different problem. That's a problem because we haven't recovered from all the businesses that shut down. So I can understand why people would be confused, but you have to look at yourself. How much do you pay when you're in that restaurant? I can't believe the bill that I get when I go out to eat, considering what it was 2 years ago. And Tony, we haven't talked about the participation rate, productivity being down, the probability of recession. There's a lot of bad indicators in the economy right now that support this 4 to 5 months of decline.
this probability of recession, it's not, I've been making the argument that we're in it, and yet nobody acts like we're in it. You talk about the long lines and the shopping and everything else, because there is long lines and people are shopping. I do see people carrying bags when I'm in a mall, to the extent that I'm ever in malls. And yes, it's absolutely true, sir. We absolutely do see prices going up everywhere. The cost in restaurants is astronomical. The cost in quick serve is equally as astronomical. But what I don't see is the slowdown in those places. What I don't see is a lack of want for things. So I want to get an understanding of, where do we get to the moment of, oh, this is the recession? At what moment do the Jamie Dimons over there at Chase, at what moment do the Janet Yellens, Secretary of the Treasury, at what moments does the IMF and a host of others say, you know what, there's nothing else to smile about? We are in the great ugly. When does that moment come?
Tony, it's already here, but you got to understand, public policy wants to mask it and give you a false impression. The private sector tells you the truth. The truth is Tesla cut their prices again because they can't sell their cars. That's a reality. You see McDonald's laying people off. That's a fact. You see Amazon laying people off. That's a fact. You see FedEx announcing that they're profitable, but they're profitable because they're cutting their expenses to the bone. That's a fact. So look at what private businesses are doing. Again, the long lines, Tony, is a lack of supply chain. It hasn't been fixed yet. We have fewer choices, and we haven't recovered from the pandemic from all those businesses that closed.
Now, one of the comments, and I'll read it to you here: prices are going up, but wages are not going to have the wave effect. I'm not sure if they're just making, saying it's just going to continue to grow and build. I don't know if that's an actually economic term, but are you seeing that prices going up, but wages aren't, or it doesn't matter if wages are going up because the inflation is taking away that buying power?
Well, it's the latter, Tony. We've seen wages going up, but they haven't gone up as much as inflation, and that's where the rub is coming in.
A part two, which is, how do we work our way out of the situation? Talking to Dr. Matt Will, economist at the University of Indianapolis. You are very, very fond of an argument, sir. And the argument is that Jerome Powell and Joe Biden are locked in a battle to the death, where you have Joe Biden's spending going on, and you have Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, his desire to counteract that by raising interest rates, which was made harder for Jerome Powell because you now have the bank issue, where banks like Silicon Valley Bank, we saw it there first, heavily into the bonds. The bonds lose value and interest rates go up. They can't properly take care of their depositors. Next thing you know, they're getting what can only be described as a bailout from you, me, and we. You add on to that Janet Yellen telling small banks, you know what? We're not going to necessarily protect you because you aren't a systemic risk. We're really going to protect our friends over here on this side, and you're going to have to fend for yourself, which is moving depositors from small banks to larger regional banks or larger institutionalized banks. This fight between Jerome Powell, which has been made much tougher on him now, and Joe Biden on the spending side, this fight doesn't seem to have an end in sight either. When, as we've discussed, you take a look at Biden's budget. The market eventually has to react to this, but they haven't done it yet. I'm asking you to look into the crystal ball. When will they?
You always do that, Tony. You always try to slip in a prediction.
Sir, that's right. This is how it works in the big city.
I can't tell you when the market's going to react to this. I can tell you this. The market's volatile. You notice how the market goes up and down and up and down, and it's constantly fluctuating because the market is on the sidelines waiting to see how this fight plays out. So, Tony, I don't know where the market's going to go, but I can tell you the market is nervous. You know it's nervous because it's fluctuating. So one day it's up a lot, one day it's down a lot, because it's sitting on the sidelines watching this boxing match between these two individuals. And right now, Jerome Powell is on the ropes and Biden is winning because he squeezed him to have to do a bailout of some of these banks, which increase the balance sheet of the Fed, which is another complicated topic, but that's fueling inflation.
Let's talk about some of these reports, sir. As we go over them, as you look at them, Dr. Matt Will, economist, University of Indianapolis. What exactly are they looking at when we talk about manufacturing? You talk about we talk about the total lack of what's the word, a supply. What is it that's actually being looked at? What are the numbers that economists like yourself are taking a look at to figure out the problem?
Well, there's two numbers that I'm looking at right now, Tony. One is productivity. Productivity is the percentage of production per hour of labor. Historically, it always goes up because we have computers, we have innovation, we can do more per hour. Tony, the amount of work that you do amazes me. How you're able to run multiple platforms at the same time. You couldn't have done that 10 years ago. Technology has made you more productive. Last year was the first year that I can recall, I look back as a couple of decades, where we had a 7% decline in productivity. That is government induced, that's regulation induced. It's caused by people who are getting in your way and keeping you from being productive. 7% last year. I've never seen a year with that big of a decline, Tony. That's one of the big factors that we're looking at right now.
So is when you see that, when you envision that, what is the formula that you then put to it? Is there a formula that you're putting to it just for the moment to figure out where we are in a snapshot in time? Or does that formula actually have a way of really playing out for us, the American people, as to how long it will take to correct? Or is it the forces that go into the formula are so unpredictable, Biden spending, et cetera, that all you could do is come up with a number. You can't come up with a time certain of when this is over.
You know, Tony, actually, the person who can predict that best is you, because it's a political problem. When the Department of Energy or Department of Agriculture sends another regulator to a farmer, that decreases productivity. When they say you are required to buy a green energy car rather than a car of your choice, that reduces productivity. When they divert money from one industry by saying, hey, banks, you can't loan money unless a company has a great ESG rating. You can't loan money to oil companies. The government and the politics is what's causing that to go down because they're putting roadblocks in front of you, Tony. That's socialism. I'm a numbers guy, but the bigger problem is the political problem that's getting in the way of market efficiency.
I mean, that's the frightening stuff. That's the stuff that has us concerned. And you know, the type of economist you are, and certainly you've been not been shy with me, and all the time that we've known each other and the conversations that you have, it's not how we usually hear economists talk. You know, that our problem with our economy is a political problem. Are economists discussing this loudly?
No, Tony, because as you know, and you point out, I'm a financial economist. I'm a guy that understands Wall Street and banking and those items. I'm not a classical theoretical economist. You know, those people that look at the age-old marginal cost and marginal supply curves. I look at reality. And so the reality is that the economists who live in ivory towers, they just look at the data that comes across their desk. They don't understand the source of the data and who creates the data. And the person that creates it is a politician. That is scary.
Talking to Dr. Matt Will, economist at the University of Indianapolis. So as you take a look at this number and you take a look at that manufacturing number, you take a look at what the Biden administration is going to cheer today about jobs numbers, it all goes back into people playing their political games, and we are still stuck. Your response is yes, we are stuck, and there's nothing about the detailed numbers that tells us we are even beginning to be prepared to get unstuck.
No, and I will go back, and I mentioned this the other day when we spoke, go back and look at Joe Manchin's editorial in the Wall Street Journal. He said that the president lied to him, and he supported an initiative. He got a vote to get things through for the Inflation Reduction Act. And in fact, the president totally reneged on his agreement, and we've gone in a negative economic direction as a result.
If you want to believe that regarding Joe Manchin, you are more than welcome to. I'm certainly not going to stop you. But Joe Manchin knew exactly what he was doing. Joe Manchin had to have known he was getting played. And if he didn't know he was getting played, then the people of West Virginia have got to start making some serious decisions, because you can't be that daft and still be in the U.S. Senate. Okay, maybe you could be Senator John Fetterman. But that's the most you can do. The very, very most. Dr. Matt Will, economist at the University of Indianapolis. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us, and need you guys to subscribe on Rumble, rumble.com/Tony Katz. Honestly, we got to start building it up here and growing here. We're doing great because of you. We want to do even better. So make sure you give this a thumbs up over at Rumble. Make sure you like what you're seeing. Make sure you subscribe, and we're going to keep building it out. We're going to keep building it out the best that we can. I appreciate you guys being here. And my thanks to Americans for Prosperity, AmericansForProsperity.org, economic liberty, free speech. That's where it's all about and what it's all about, AmericansForProsperity.org. I will catch you guys next time.